back to A Well-Designed Business. My name is Luann Nigara, and I'm so glad you found this podcast. Together with my husband Vince and our partner Bill, we have grown our company Window Works from the ground up. So I know and I understand the challenges you face in running your interior design business. I also know that your talent alone isn't enough to ensure your success. So on this podcast, we talk about strategies and practical steps to help you grow your business. But make no mistake about it, we have our share of fun here too, mixed in with those aha moments that I love so much. This isn't fluff. Nobody has time for that. Whether you are a new interior designer or a seasoned designer, I am here to help you create and to manage the kind of interior design firm that you dream of. It's straight talk and it's action. Are you ready? Let's get started. Hi, welcome to Power Talk Friday on A Well-Designed Business. I'm so happy to continue the conversation on how to pitch yourself and how to get press. We started it last Friday with Ashley Hotham-Cox, the editor-in-chief of Design and Decor in Charlotte. And today I'm thrilled to talk with my friend Amy Flurry again. Amy has 2 decades of editorial experience, conceiving story ideas, producing shoots, and writing copy for magazines and online publications, including Country Living, In Style, Refinery 29, Conde Nast Traveller, Better Homes and Gardens, and Lucky Magazine. Inspired by her career in publishing, Amy authored Recipe for Press, Pitch Your Story and Create a Buzz, which we spoke about together on episode 108 of this podcast. So please be sure to go back and listen to that show. On that show, Amy breaks down the do's and don'ts of exactly how to pitch for press. And now Amy is back after writing her second book, Recipe for Press Designer Edition. This book is filled to the brim with tools for interior designers, just like you, architects, landscape planners, and product designers that need to take advantage of the new media opportunities available. I love how Amy applies her collective expertise in trend direction to product and brand development, working with companies to expand their marketing strategies, and to connect businesses to the interior design trade. Amy is a very smart lady, and if you haven't met her yet, you are in for a treat. Now, keep in mind that this coming May 22nd, I am going to be at Lefroy Brooks for opening night at the ICFF at the A&D building. I will be giving a presentation and then signing books and spending time getting to know you. So please go to luannigara.com, go to the live events tab to find the RSVP link. I'm looking forward to giving the first 25 people a free book, and if you've already bought your book, please bring it with you. I'd love to sign it. Okay, let's find out how Amy wants to teach us about getting press. Hey, Amy, thank you so much for joining me again on A Well-Designed Business. How are you today?
Hey, Luann. I'm so happy to be here. I really am. I've been preparing all week, making notes, and you should see this display in front of me, things that I didn't want to forget to say.
Well, good luck with that, because I do the same thing, and then I end an interview, and I'm like, you didn't ask her those 5 questions.
Yeah.
So we'll see if you're more successful with your prepping ahead of time. So I'm very happy to have you back on the show. You're one of my favorite people in this space, Amy. You were originally on my show back at episode 108 when we talked about how to pitch yourself as an interior designer to the media. And of course, you are the authority in this space. You are now not 1, but 2 books on how to do this. We have the first book, which is Recipe for Press, and the second book is Recipe for Press Designer Edition. Pitch your projects and create a buzz. So,
it makes me happy to even hear it.
Yeah.
You know what it takes to write a book. So it's nice that it's tangible
the truth.
now.
It's the truth. And you know what? I'm going to share with everybody what happened between you and I and the gift that you gave me over a year and a half ago. So I was in the middle of writing the first book when I met you and interviewed you for the podcast, which, by the way, you pitched yourself very effectively, very deftly. I will tell everybody.
Thank you.
And I was in the middle of writing that book, and I was already scheduled dollar bills committed to being the keynote speaker for the IWCE, the International Window Coverings Expo.
I remember.
Right?
Yep.
And so this was a commitment for March of 2017. And you and I met, I think it was December of that year of 2016 as we were interviewing. And I was not quite ready. And the book was not quite ready, but I had told them that it would be ready for that. And they had set up book signings and everything. And I just said to you, Amy, like, what am I going to do? I could finish this and get it out the door, but I know, like, I just feel like I'm rushing through it. And you said to me this sentence, Luann, do not put out minimum viable product. And I
said, ain't nobody interested in that,
that's
right?
it. And I'm going to tell you what, it was the most clear message. I just had a moment of an aha moment, and I went, you're right. And you said that will sit there forever. And I just went, you know what? Well, I'm reliving the moment, Amy, right now. It was such an intense.
And I did follow, and I kept looking like, I wonder if she put it out. I wonder if she did that. And then when I saw you actually come out, I remember,
year later.
Year later, I was like, no, I kind of knew deep down that you weren't going to let that go.
No, it was like you took a bow and arrow from, Georgia and, sent it straight up to New Jersey, and it hit me between the eyes. It was that kind of a moment. It truly was. And I'm so grateful for you for having the courage to say that to me, because somebody else might have just felt like, oh, let me just, give her encouragement and cheer her on and say, oh, I'm sure it'll be good. Do you know what I'm saying? I mean, it takes a lot of courage to be honest with somebody. And I'm not saying because I'm me and you're you. I'm saying just to be honest in general. It takes a lot of courage, because I live my life that way. And, I get called being direct and blunt and sometimes, bossy or whatever. But, like when people are asking you for their legit advice and opinion, it does no good to blow smoke up their butt, right?
I think that was the book number one coming from editorial. And that was my kind of different perspective on PR, because I know sometimes now when people say, oh, Amy Flurry, and they go directly to PR, it wasn't that I was coming from public relations. I was coming from the other side of the desk, from editorial. And that book was a response to writing about people's stories or seeing people's pitch get rejected, or seeing people try so hard to get my attention and sending all the wrong messages. And I know it's not an editor's job to tell you what those wrong signals are. It's not, they don't have the time to do that. But I saw it happen often enough and saw good product, good stories go by the wayside, and then so stuff, get quickly pushed through because of these simple things that nobody would talk about. So I think that's what that first book was like. Here's what every editor everywhere wants you to know about pitching that they're not going to tell you.
Yes, I remember you telling us on that first podcast. And
then it's kind of gentle, it's to help you get there.
Exactly.
If you're serious about you hate to put all of that time and that effort in and that expense, and to be doing just a few things wrong that says, oh, she doesn't get it, or he doesn't quite get it.
Right. No, it's terrific. I love that you bring that perspective to it, that you have done the job on the other side and you clearly understand what is the pitch that gets through and why does it get through. So let's go to this new book, the Recipe for Press Designer Edition. What
that I'm now having to pitch.
That's right. That you're now having to pitch.
Take my own advice.
Exactly. So, but you what you've done is in this book, you've done, first of all, if you haven't gotten the book yet, you have to go to recipeforpress.com and order your book. As an interior designer, you're going to love it because it has almost like a coffee table book feeling to it, where it's a beautiful book, and within it are all of the principles on how to actually get press for your interior design firm. But it's a beautiful book to touch, the quality of the paper. I hats off to you, because, I was happy to get the printed printed word on the paper and make sure that I was proud of the printed word. Like take the next
Right.
step and make it pretty. I was like, look, we'll work on the cover, making it pretty.
Yeah,
The rest of it's just regular.
I love pulling together those teams and illustrations. I love so much coming from editorial. I like beautiful articles and photography. So that's probably my most favorite part, is pulling together the team of editor, graphic designer, illustrator,
You really can see your magazine experience fully at hand here, because it really does. It's exactly what you said, this collaboration of all of these artisans that bring it together with, executing your vision, right?
And plus I had an interiors editor telling me, designers aren't going to read. You've got to make it pretty. You've got to make it like really digestible little chunks so they'll pick up a little bit.
Yeah.
And I know, I work with designers so much. I know that's the truth.
Yes.
It's got to be small, digestible chunks of information that they can think on, but it has to be couched in a beautiful way. And I like that.
Well, and I think too, look, I mean, the aspect of putting it together in a beautiful way definitely speaks to the design industry and our colleagues out there. But the, digestible chunks and, no fluff and all that, that's everybody now. That's one of the biggest compliments that I'm getting on my book, is that you can sit down, you can read it in an hour and a half. You feel like you learned something. You feel like you have a roadmap to open and run your business. But it wasn't like, repeating yourself ad nauseum. Right. Like I listen to audiobooks incessantly, and it makes me crazy when a book that I love, that I'm getting good information from, every chapter is basically rehashing half the chapter from before it, and I'm just like, oh, sweet Jesus, I'm not 5. I can remember what you told me last time. You know what I'm saying? It's like, holy moly. And I have to say, as a writer of a book, I actually understand the tendency, because I did start to do that in my own book. I was writing, and I might explain this whole one concept in a particular chapter, and then like 4 chapters later, I wanted to build on a point and say, now when you're handling this task in your business, XYZ, and you will go back and execute what you did. And I started to go down the road of re-explaining it.
Yeah.
And I was just like, when I reread it, I was like, oh my God, you are doing the same thing that you complain about other people doing. And then I had to have a moment.
It's an easy thing to do.
It is, but I had to have a moment where I went, well, maybe everybody does it this way because it's important to remind everybody. And then I just went, no, you know what? And I went through and I slashed like 45 pages from my own book. I like boom, out. And I wanted to say at every chapter, like if you forgot what it was in chapter 2, go back and read it. Like I'm not going to write it all over again.
I think there's something to getting it out. I think I did that too. And again, I had a very good editor, Marjorie Gage, on this. So she would help slashing, but there was something that was important to getting it out, and I could see I was doing that same thing. Like, wow, this feels very familiar.
Like, I said this 5 times.
you edit, and
and I kept on thinking of the sentence, what does everybody say in fashion? Get completely dressed and then take something off. Right. So, not only did I start out with, what I thought was, what's funny is I remember thinking, this is a good solid book. It's got 135 pages. Yes. And then I reread it and I was like, this is a piece of crap, and it repeats itself over and over. So I'm slashing. And then I read it again. I'm like, this is 91 pages. Is this enough?
Yeah, exactly. No, and you're thinking, what does 91 pages feel like in my hand? Is this going to be like a pamphlet, or is this a book?
That's right. But the icing and the proof, I should say, is in the pudding. Is thankfully, people have commented and said, I love that I can sit down and read it in an hour and a half, and I feel like I learned something. I'm like, yes, home run.
I get that too. Like I'm reading it. I got through most of it on the airplane.
That's it.
And they'll go back to it.
That's
because
right.
Again, they're nice, similarly broken up into kind of digestible.
Exactly. So run us through this designer edition, Amy. What do you want us to know? I mean, obviously we need to read it to get all of the good information out of you, but what's your overarching points that you want to teach our design colleagues now about your book?
Well, one thing I think you will appreciate from a business point of view, that I could see clearly. Well, first off, that first book attracted more interior designers than any one audience.
Okay.
So I started paying attention to that.
Smart lady.
And then,
Give them what they want.
Yeah. It's funny, the makers, they just took the information and they made another product from it,
Right.
It was so quick. That surprised me, interior designers. So I started paying attention to that. And then manufacturers started coming to me to help them put together their internal communication because that's what I was suggesting, is that's going to be your next hire. You've got to control the message from the inside. As a writer, I worked with the biggest companies who could afford global PR firms, but they always had it together from the inside first, and that complemented. If you're so lucky as to be able to have a publicist, any good publicist will tell you that you don't need to work against them. We all need to be on the same message. So these manufacturers were entering a moment of also, like, the designers, like, oh my gosh, now we have to have catalogs that look like magazines. We have to have all these social media channels too, and newsletters, and it has to be beautiful. And that was a new moment we're talking manufacturers, and so while that created kind of advisory partnerships, I could also see, and this is why I think you'll just appreciate me picking up on, Luann, because you're such a great businesswoman. I was like, you know what? These companies aren't going to be profitable without the designer buying power in these years to come. Right. And they haven't been so kind to the designer. Right. And now all of a sudden they've got to, not just engage the designer. They not only come back and say, okay, now we do want to do custom with you, and now we will sell no minimum, and now we do want your business. But they have to engage the designer, and they're going to need that designer's voice and contributions, because everybody needs content. So it's not just the magazines that need content now. Everybody needs content, including manufacturers.
Oh.
You see what I'm saying?
Okay. Yes, I do.
So if I've got manufacturers calling on me personally to pull together teams internally, and seeing that those communications teams are structured differently than they once were, and that they also are having to communicate now more with designers in a meaningful way, that's why I saw really these interior designers are going to be so swamped with opportunities for press that they need to create a strategy, because the press just looks differently now. They will have no problem getting it and communicating and seeing their projects or their, themselves profiled or their product mentioned, but they need to create a plan around what is good for them.
Okay, so what you're saying is that you are seeing a shift in the industry where not just magazines are in a position looking for content that features designers and their work, but you're suggesting that you are seeing where a manufacturer is no longer able to just sit there and make their product. Like, I'm thinking now, let me see if I'm on the right track. So let's just talk about Kravet, right? So Kravet Inc. is a company, they make area rugs and furniture and fabric and lighting and accessories and everything else. But they have their inspired magazine that comes out every quarter. And so what you're saying is these are opportunities because these manufacturers are trying to reach the greater industry in ways other than that are just by having product. And so you're suggesting that designers should look to these things and pitch themselves to be featured in Inspired, or maybe some other company has some other way. Maybe it's on their website. They have a blog or something. Is that what you're talking about?
That's exactly right. And it's validation. It's for the companies that the designers are saying, let me show you what a spread using your rugs looks like in my home or in my client's home and why I used it. That is what, and you've got a designer doing that on behalf of the manufacturer. There's no better no better commercial for that company. And remember, they're having to put out newsletters now. They're having to put out blog posts. They're having to fill their social media channels too, and they didn't have to do that 5 years ago. But let's just take Laura Thurman, for example. She was on your show.
Love Laura.
Yeah. When she put together the book, she just needed permission. She was like, you mean I don't have to have anybody, to do this on my behalf? I can create the pitch and I can pitch them directly. And when she started putting it together, that, for example, she used a lot of Universal and furniture in a particular project. And she continued to do that with a few different projects. So she thought, maybe I would be a good fit. Maybe they are looking for content. If I created content, which she seems to be clearly good at, maybe they would be interested in it. Were they interested in it? Yes, they were interested in it. And not only did they put that to come and do a video post on this designer in Nashville who used some of their stuff, it ended up being an article in Business of Home.
Wow.
Can you see the value? So there is that shift on the manufacturing, but also look at the number of designers that have been on your podcast. Look at the number of designers that have created their own podcast and then invited guests. I don't think I've ever seen an industry that has, in such short order, used communications more wildly than this one in really meaningful ways.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So I'm just saying there's a lot of different kinds of press and opportunities to get your name out there, not just these traditional forms, but they all necessitate a good pitch.
Okay, right. That's the whole premise of everything. But I want to go back a couple of things. First of all, I want to say that Laura Thurman was on episode 272, and it was an awesome episode. She is just a fabulous designer, but smart lady. And so that's 272 if you want to go back and listen to it. But the other thing that I want to say is, or want to ask you is that on one hand, clear me up. So, for instance, Laura, she did this thing where she got hooked up with Universal, and of course it became features in different things. And that's something that is valuable.
She didn't get hooked up. She pitched Universal.
Right. Okay,
yeah.
Right. No, she pitched them. Right. Okay.
Yes, she did.
Okay. So, but the thing about it is I want to just make sure that a designer listening doesn't go running down the wrong rabbit hole on this specific aspect, okay? Because we're going to get back to the making a good pitch, which is valid for every avenue. But the thing is that happened to particularly pay off for Laura in the sense that it created multiple little things that went on there. And all of those things are of value when she puts herself out there to the consumer community. It's like, I have outside respect from a manufacturer, that yada, yada. But to just have, what if it is just to be featured on a blog post or just like that is not consumer facing, that's designer facing. So is there a distinction when you are working with a designer that's looking to create press for themselves? I mean, don't you have to start with your why? Like, why do you,
of course.
Right? Okay.
Of course. And really the ultimate, the why, and is this a good fit?
Right. Okay.
Is it a good fit?
Because all press, like what they say, there's no press that's bad press, right, or whatever the saying is. But the thing is, the truth is, if the press is only going to the industry and, you're an interior designer trying to get a client, you might get more respect from your peers and you might get invited to speak on a panel. But how is that going to translate to dollar bills to your design firm unless you're really heading toward being an influencer?
And
right?
I'll tell you why it made sense for her.
Right.
Because I remember her exactly telling me what she wanted to do.
Yes.
And she did want to be a personality.
Yes.
Therefore, that really works towards her ultimate purpose of press.
Right.
And, you talk about that, it's just a common theme on so many of the podcasts. And it's true to this too. Before you even start pitching and getting you excited about press, it's a lot of it's time on your part, and you got to know why. What's the point? What do you want from it?
Right.
Because if you can't answer that, then the roadmap is really, you'll go down all kinds of roads and it won't really do anything for you. So what do you want that to do? So in her case, because she does ultimately want to be a personality in this industry, and was very clear on that from the beginning, then that would make sense to
Right.
someone like her, that she create that opportunity,
Right,
and
and
that
that's the
visibility within the trade.
Right, and that's a good distinction to make, because there are many that aspire to that, but there are many that just want to do work every day and make business and make beautiful homes, in which case you want to really get clear on that and then focus your attentions when you create your pitches to the outlets that are consumer facing. So, but
That's
however,
right.
I love
Yeah.
this whole thing though, because it's not something that I had considered before, that if you are interested in being a personality within the industry and being known among your peers, that there are opportunities among this myriad of manufacturers that are looking for content. See, that's the part that we always forget. It's the part that we on the other side of the table. And I remember learning this not only from you when you were on the show the first time, but also from Ren Miller, who is the editor-in-chief of Design New Jersey here. And I remember it was the first time I was like, oh, you guys have magazines to fill. You're looking for us.
Everyone,
you know,
and that's what I
it's
saw
like me
as
looking
an
for
editor.
guests, right?
That's right. Well, I think my vantage was different in that I was a freelancer, so I was more in people's spaces. I was going to their boutique or their restaurant or their studio or office, and I kind of made it a little bit easier. I wasn't in New York, that really behind in a cubicle.
Right.
So I did see that there was some confusion, like, if you don't find me, then you must not like me, or you must not be good enough. And that was not the case at all. Every publication runs on new.
Right.
Everyone needs content, and I'll just keep saying, not just the magazines anymore.
Right. Your point. Yep.
But it was kind of like, if you don't find me, if I don't find you, I don't care who the messenger is. I just want to be on the receiving end and receive this pitch and know that you're ready for the attention I could turn on you.
Exactly.
You look ready. Your product, you're sending me all the signals that say, yep, you're ready for that spotlight. So I just to demystify that and say, you don't have to have a publicist. Of course, we would all like to, but I even started my book with a publicist, because I think people think, oh, well, when I get to that point, I can just hand it off and they'll take it from there. And that is not true at all.
No.
When you enlist a publicist, you are signing up for a lot of work to support that publicist. And any good publicist would tell you that, like, you don't get to stand on the podium before running the race.
Right. No, it's true. And I remember Robin Barron was on the show in the first summer, and I remember her saying the same thing when she hired Andrew Joseph PR firm, and she said the same thing. Like,
you've got to be prepared.
Be prepared. I'm out. I'm out of the house like 3 nights a week doing events.
Yeah.
Like, this is not just, hey, he's working hard on my behalf and I'm sitting home. She's like, no, he's working hard on my behalf to get me in front of people, but I guess what, I have to go there.
Yeah. And she would tell you, one of her most well-known clients, Barclay Butera, when she asks or needs something, he texts her back quickly.
Yes.
That's the same would be true for the editors. When they need something fast, they turn to those people that they know are going to deliver, that they know, have the goods.
Yes, exactly.
And deliver quickly. Yeah.
So, but that all comes down to is what the opening point is, that there are more places that are available to us to pitch than just the traditional magazines that we should.
There is so much opportunity.
Right. Okay.
I mean, alumni magazines, podcasts, conference blogs. You can be on panels. Panels now are a different kind of press. ASID has magazines almost per the state. I don't think that's new, but I'm just saying, there are newsletters, and I started the book with this point, and I think it really kind of shook me when I heard this woman say it. It was a woman who had come to hear me speak, and we broke into small groups afterwards. She was an interior designer, and when we broke into that small group, she had committed the day and the time and the money to being there, and I said, okay, so why do you want the press? And she just got really quiet, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, I don't know, I don't know. Now I don't know." and if we don't know, it's going to fizzle out.
Right.
And I asked a few questions, and then she kind of did know. She's like, actually, I just want to get more clients in the city nearby. I've kind of saturated, where I am. I would like to do just what she said. I'd like more clients in the neighboring city. I said, well, that would guide where I would tell you to begin thinking about where to pitch into. We're not going to pitch country living or house beautiful if we're looking for clients in Atlanta.
Right.
We're going to get Atlanta Homes and Lifestyles and Interiors magazine. We're going to even get more specific than that. What publications are being put in the neighborhoods? I'm just familiar with Atlanta, so I'm going to say, Buckhead Living is a neighborhood. And what are those clients that you want? What are they reading? It might be a Junior Service League newsletter.
Right.
That's press, but that would give you a lot more focus so much faster and make so much more sense. So when we realize that press is not about ego, it actually is business, and it should have a purpose. Otherwise, I think it will just kind of peter out really quickly, because it will fall flat. It will kind of go here, there, and everywhere, and it probably wouldn't move the needle.
Well, and it's a great point. And, the little nugget in there, that press is not about ego. It's business. It's about marketing your firm. And to your exact point on that, to have an editorial, to have a little piece in Traditional Home might feel really fantastic and you feel really proud, but the chances of it translating into a client in your area are so slim. Whereas if there's a regional magazine in your, I just recently interviewed Ashley Cox, who is the editor of the magazines in Charlotte and Raleigh and so that's it. Like, be a big fish in a little pond. If your design firm is in Charlotte, then go pitch Ashley and get a spread where every single person that reads this magazine is a potential client in your exact pond that you swim in, right?
That's right. And if your goal is, another designer might have a different goal,
right? And
there would be a different strategy. Still, those national designers, say you're a designer who is going to launch a lighting collection at some point, and it's coming, but you still need that. And that the national landscape is more where you need to be going. Those national editors still want to see that you've been vetted by those regional editors, that you're still, something in your area. And it also tells them they kind of understand how editorial works. It's good practice. Maybe some of those regional editors will be a little more understanding sometimes when you don't, when they have to call you twice for what they need, or when you send don't have that high resolution image or whatever.
Right.
You get the hang of working with these editors, and
so it's like
they often go to those editors and say, they read what they're doing. Who are you looking at? I mean, it's a very small industry, so.
Oh, and so what you're saying is that if you do have aspirations to getting national exposure because you want to be a celebrity interior designer or an influencer in this space, that it is very valuable to work your way up the food chain, starting with your local press and your local market, because it not only creates some buzz about you, but it shows the nationals that you have some chops here, that you've been through it before.
That's right. I just don't think you get to skip that step. It applies to most things in life.
Right. It's like you want to be a professional baseball player, but you're going to play high school, college, the minor leagues, do a couple of years in AAA ball before you get the big call, right?
Forget that these editors these days and writers, you may think and I put there's a chapter where we talk about a masthead, and we have a kind of a sample masthead, and what a masthead is the key to who pulls together the pages of the magazine.
Oh, that's so valuable, Amy.
Yeah, and what does the assistant editor do, and what does the senior editor do, and what does the editorial assistant do? Well, one thing that we know will happen, one thing that we know is true in this moment where these editors are not just contributing to that one magazine. They probably are freelancing for a few others. They probably have a blog of their own. And that editorial assistant will probably be assistant to the senior editor in a matter of about 2 years. Or they'll move to another magazine and they'll move up in position. So you are really, I think, the undertone, the undercurrent of this whole book is about relationships. Within this industry, editors share a lot. They if it's not a good fit for me, often they might kick it to somebody that they know it is a good fit for. And they move around a lot and they push a lot of information out there in many different areas. So we're in kind of, like I said, it's a golden time for designers, but it could be overwhelming too because there's so much opportunity. So that was again, back to the point of why and how do you create the roadmap for press, and what are the many different veins that you could get that word out there. And how do you keep it ongoing? Because 1 or 2 times is not going to make a significant difference to your business. And you need a constant presence.
So that's a good question. And it's funny because let's see if you're okay with this. Originally, I thought we would go through a little bit of the recipe for press. But the reality is I know we took it apart in your first episode. I know that we went through the different steps, the way to make a pitch, the components of it, how many pictures to include and all that. So now that we know that someone who's genuinely interested not only can read your book on it, but can also go to that podcast episode, do we take a little pivot here, Amy, and we say to our friends listening, look, if you want the technical, get the book, go to the podcast. But I just love what you just said there, because I don't know that we covered that the first time. How do you keep it going? Right?
Okay, I like this pivot because for starters, there is a book, and my God, is there a lot of information in there, including what a pitch looks like for a product, what a pitch looks like for a project, because there are just enough nuances there, how to follow up, what that follow up should look like.
Yes, you cover that in great detail.
It's in there, in great detail. So the do's and don'ts for interacting with editors, but I like where we're going with just this moment, because in the way I think about communications and sharing is very strategic to business, but it's also about nurturing relationships, and everyone grows from it. That's Amy's style.
Okay.
So when I say there are so many ways for press, let me just give an example of one way that I've pulled people together and use that moment not only, and I'll just use my book launch as an example. How's that?
Yes.
Okay. So Amy's going to have a book launch, and I need people to know about the book, but I'm going to have it in a beautiful space that I really feel comfortable and love and know people will feel good in. I'm going to bring in different partners who also want to be in front of designers, and who need to share what they do with designers. I'm also going to bring an editor to, after I talk, join me so that she can say, Amy's right. This is what I need. And that editor might then, and here's what happened in my case, that editor might do some film for her publication online, because they have online now space they have to fill in addition to their print issue. There's an article on the book launch in Designers Today. From that same moment, a lot of the designers there was a lot of business being done in the downtime. There were blogs written after that book launch from the takeaways from what Amy said. So you can see that there's this layering of press, and it all looks a little bit differently. And even the night before, I had a porch party, and I invited some designers I didn't know. I invited somebody who was a blogger with some influence. And Luann, I photograph everything. And I use some for behind the scenes for social. I use some for my blog. I kick those pictures to the editors that may not have been, or to someone who may not have been able to bring a photographer. And so from one event, and I give those pictures also to the people who were participating, manufacturers, I'm speaking of, and then they write a blog, and then I write a post, and then the designers do something, and then you invite an editor, and she's saying what she needs. At that very book launch, there were designers there, and when Jane Dagamy was saying, oh, and by the way, I'm working on this for future, and I'm looking for designers who, have also retail boutiques. I saw where one designer went from there, pitched Jane, and then got a full page in the new issue of Designers Today. So
Wow.
I like layering, and I like strategy, and I understand that we're all in the business of communications right now, whether we want to be or not. And that's kind of what I saw happening with communications and commerce, is that they, instead of being on two ends of the spectrum, they were coming closer and closer and closer together, not just for the designers, but for the manufacturers, for the marketplace, the big markets that we go to, and that we would have to get comfortable with that. And if we could get comfortable in a way where we're sharing each other's story, then it just has more legs.
It's genius. And by the way, I mean, seriously, it's genius. And I'm just going to say, you forgot the one other major component of it is the FOMO that it put out there. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I when you talk about this moment, I remember reading about it, seeing it on social media, and I was like, oh my goodness. And look, you invited me to be at it. I happened to be out of town at it, but I was just like, when I had the invite, I was like, I really want to go. Then when I watched it all happening, I was like, what an amazing gathering and what I loved about it was that it was a smaller gathering, right? Like I don't know if it was 15 people, 20 people, but it wasn't 500 people. But the reality is I love that you did it intentionally, that you have what you calling this layering strategy to it, that you invited people that need to know about the book, designers. You invited people to a space that was fun and comfortable and intimate and felt special. And then you also invited people who could benefit or want to be with the same people that are your target audience, right? So that would be me and Jane and others like that, right? And then, you have the outside authority, the outside editor that can get up and give a little presentation and confirm everything that you just said to be true, and that you were you had designers who are willing to blog about it and make all the rest of us jealous that we weren't at this event. I mean, it's just genius.
And you know what, though, if we look at it really, well, thank you for saying that. I believe in the smaller gatherings. I feel like they're both meaningful, but they're lasting. You create those lasting relationships. I believe in bringing people in that don't always get the invitation, so I'm always on the lookout. Maybe that's just the editor in me, is looking for that next, like, And it's funny because I don't always know until after the fact when I ask somebody, like, hey, would you like to come to this?
Wasn't that Laura the first time?
That was Laura.
Yes. She was like completely like a kid in a candy shop. She was like, and Amy invited me to her party. And I was like, my God, she did? That's so cool.
But I'm always kind of looking, but I saw somebody develop who had a voice and whose design went with it, but I also just thought it would be more interesting. It's more interesting. But what I didn't think of is, like, I didn't realize I was asking someone to drive 7 hours. I didn't even really to come back. And the thing that she did was she said yes. And that's a sign of somebody who's really committed, interested in making these relationships and connections. Is just get there, just show up. And that's what I think. There's a chapter in the book called Meet, Greet, Show Up, something like that. Meet, greet, support. But these editors have to be more forward facing now too. So when you go to the markets, you'll see their panels that have editors on them, and that's the time. Show up, and say hi, and don't bombard them, but it's important to support each other. But one thing I was observing about my own party, my own book launch, as we were just talking about, the one common thread, everybody there needed the designer. Now that I think about it. We had
Okay.
the porch party on the, at a manufacturer's who is a designer only manufacturer, and I was, that would be good for them to know about her. Plus, she has a very beautiful showroom in High Point that's unusual and warm and intimate, and that's Red Egg. Um, it, where the other place that had the book launch the day that I spoke, that was Zoe Bios Creative, and it's in this gorgeous old marble and tile old retail shop that they now occupy in downtown High Point. They need, of course, the designers to know what they do. Designers today needs to find new designer because of content, and I need those designers to share my book with other designers and say, you need this book. So that was kind of the common thread,
Right.
except for my mom and sisters who showed up, which is so awesome.
Yeah.
And they were taking notes too.
Yeah. No, you know what, Amy, what I love about it is that, look, it's not a hobby. You're writing a book for a purpose. The purpose is to not only make money from the book sales, but the purpose is also to, support the other things that you do in your business that are
right.
saleable items to the interior design community, right? And
That's
your
right.
consulting and everything else. But what I love about it is that you create an event that is worthwhile for every person in the room to be at, enjoyable for every person in the room to be at, but also supports your mission to be a profitable business. Like, you know what I'm saying? I just,
I think
love
it
that.
can work that way.
Yes, I love that. I love that. It reminds me of the lunch and learns that we do at Window Works. They're so much fun. I mean, we had 55 people come to see.
The crowd that you had recently. That was
Yes,
amazing.
it is something else. And the thing is, look, for Window Works, 55 interior designers find out about our products and services. And every time we have a lunch and learn, somebody stays back after it's over with and says, so how does it work
That's
if I
right.
work with Window Works, right? But in the meantime, all the designers in the room are not only gathering the information from the speaker that we've invited to come, but they're networking with each other. They're helping each other. I have to say, I'm missing the boat on a lot of the other layers that you're doing. And it's making me realize, and hopefully it's making our colleagues realize that there's a lot of things that we do that we are not tying up all the bows on it. And you have tied up all the bows here. And I find that in reflection and talking to you and the way you carefully put this 8 pieces together to create this book launch, that very often I'm running so fast that I'm doing 3 or 4 of them, but I'm not doing all of them. And so that's a good lesson for us, Amy, to think about when we're going to take our time and energy to execute something. So an interior designer, I've often encouraged the interior designers that we talk with on the show and that I'm talking with in the private coaching sessions is go hit your local kitchen manufacturer up. Go hit your local window treatment retailer up. Go hit your local tiler retailer up and say, I'd love to do a presentation here for your clients and my clients. You know what I'm saying? Like, they're like the editors of all these different publications online and in print are looking for content. Us retailers are looking for clients. And if you have a skill set that you can bring into us that will bring in those clients, then yes, we want you in our showrooms. And so, but from your point to not just show up, oh, here I am, I did this. I love this extra, like who else can I incorporate? What else can I have? Is there an editor that I can involve? Make sure I take the before and the behind the scenes and the formal pictures. So smart.
Yeah, and then when you do bother to photograph all of that, you really have to then act on it because it would be very easy to sit on those pictures.
Easy. Believe me,
and
300 from the birthday party.
And we're in the, I say this probably every talk that I give. If I could only walk in and say one word, I would say photography, and that would be that. Because we're in a moment where things are driven by images. And so all of that content, I could even revisit later. I could use it once in the way that made sense to the event and push it around and share with people, and we could just try to all make sure we're not sharing the very same pictures, I could revisit it a year later probably and mine it for more stuff. I would just look at it with a different lens, with a different angle. And that's how an editor looks at things. Not, and I do this with some of the companies I advise when we're looking at, say, for example, an Instagram post. You see one thing and I see another thing. And I might see the Orange story where they're focused on a sconce, So you can take old images and put a new moment on it.
Nice. I love that. I
So
love
we're
that.
probably all sitting on a lot of, stuff that we could recycle.
Right. And so in that vein of how do you keep it going, right? That's along that same vein. So one of the things that you're saying is build relationships with people, give value. So you invite Jane, you give value. You invite Laura, you give value. Teach her how to pitch, and a minute later she pitches Universal and she's off to the races, right?
Let me tell you, I'm not going to. It's value for me too. I mean,
yes. Oh yeah.
Oh,
Absolutely.
They wanted to come and cover my book launch. That's
right. It's a two-way street and it's a business. Let's be real, right? Exactly, 100%. But it's the thinking about what your point is, and I think what I'm trying to capture in your point is thinking about. Yes, don't be shy to think about yourself as your business. You've got to put yourself out there, okay? But then when you do that, you're saying build the relationship, nurture, and figure out how what you want to accomplish also can help somebody else accomplish their goals. And that's where that whole relationship comes in, and that's how you are talking about creating how to keep it going.
Yes, that is exactly right. And the designer's attention, I just think we're going to find our people, and then we're going to show up and support each other. So you kind of need to learn what each other is about, but it also is not easy to pull together 40 designers.
Right.
How do you do that? I'm doing it on relationships. I'm still having to work hard, and then once they get there, make it worth it.
Right.
Deliver something of value. So I can do that and still be an independent space by having create relationships. So that's I'm not sure if I'm answering that question.
No, you are
perfectly.
Yeah, no.
But one other thing I'm learning, Luann, and I think this really plays to what you teach and believe in as well. Okay, once we have this content, because we're having to create, it's like we're creating our story for all of these channels, our systems, the systems for getting that stuff out, whether it's one newsletter a month. And I think in seriesable themes.
Oh, okay.
Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
So can I create a series so that what I'm doing makes sense to that series for this newsletter that I put out every month? And I think that that is something I'm learning in communications that applies to every company, whether it's a showroom or a mid-size interior design firm or a manufacturer. Because if we're trying to reinvent the wheel and be creative with every piece of communication that we're pushing out, we're gonna get fatigued, So
what you mean by that is that when you sit there, and it sounds like you're translating your skills as a magazine editor, where the magazine, the theme might be kitchen and bath, or the theme might be outdoor.
That's a good analogy. If you take apart or deconstruct a magazine, let's just say traditional home or something like that, and you look at how each section is broken down, they're broken down in sections. And for example, the movers and makers page in traditional home is always going to be the movers and makers page. They're not going to change that because that's a formula that works well for them. So once they have that movers and makers page, then they go looking for somebody to put in there, on that page. That's what I mean. You're right about that editorial skill of, okay, I'm going to, if I'm a showroom and I'm looking for a newsletter idea that I can consistently put out and make it look like my own, but can keep up with, I might do focus on, fireside chat with a lighting designer, for example, or with another designer that you carry in your showroom. And I would make it look the same every time. I would, have a graphic designer create a look for it. And that's very similar to how magazines are, in that, when you deconstruct those sections, they have a formula that's working for them.
Right.
And then we're filling content into those formulas. And so when we get that repeatable look, it's easier for us to be consistent in.
Right. And I can't think of off the top. Well, you know what? I can think of one off the top of my head. I remember interviewing Claire Stasak of Centered by Design, and I won't recall what the title of the recurring post is, but I recall the theme of it. And what she does is she features entrepreneurial, artistic women in her I want to say in her local geo community to Chicago. You know what I mean? So in other words, it's, she's an interior designer. She posts about the designs that she does and everything, but she has this recurring theme with where she features these women and these artists and these entrepreneurs. And so that's what you're saying. So you're saying you can exactly do this within your own website or whatever it might be, that you think about things that are themes for you that are authentic to you and to your design firm, but it's like almost like a cheat sheet. It's almost like a cut sheet, because, when you sit down and you have to write a blog post, it's like, oh, okay, let me do a fireside chat, or let me do one of my entrepreneur people, or let me do, because I do a kitchen post once a month, and the top 10, so I like that. That's good.
And I think that I have found is very helpful when we're the editors of our own social media channels, and we're the editors of our own blog posts and newsletters. It helps to really create those. There's a fashion designer that I like a lot, and she has one it's just called Muse, and it always looks the same. It's a different person, and they're wearing something of hers, but I imagine she's always looking for that next perfect fit to go in that
right. Right.
There's
a lot.
And that's how any editor is thinking. So back to the pitch, when you're reading a magazine, let's turn it around a different way. Or when you read something and you get that feeling like, gosh, that could be me. That's a good gut feeling, because you're aligning with what you're seeing. Okay. One of the big no-nos of pitching is don't try to make yourself fit. I think Christine Phillips says, stay in your hula hoop. Don't try to make something fit. It just is not a good fit because you're so fabulous. When you see something that that resonates, that's that place's formula. That's what they like to run. So when you see your true competitor, instead of feeling like, she gets all the press, understand that now that editor is now looking for someone like her. Right. Now's your chance to pitch. They can't use her again. They've got to find someone new. Right. So that's kind of a.
But that's a good way to look at it. It's like, if you're not trying to fit a square peg into a round hole, because it's not going to work. It's not, you can make the most, you can spend hours on the pitch, but if it's ultimately falling to the wrong place. I also do remember, it's funny, I don't know, do you remember listening? Did you hear the show with Lynn K. Leonidas? I wonder if you listened to that one, Amy, because I know
Keep going. What was the focus on that one?
So what happened with Lynn was, when I interviewed her, I want to say she was in business about a year. Now, these are details that give it 6 months one way or another, right? But the thing was that when I learned that she was in business at whatever it was, anywhere from a year to 18 months, I was so surprised at the number of publications that she had already been featured in. And when I tell you, it was like a half a dozen or more, okay? And what happened was, she described how she carefully studies all her target publications. So there might be 5 or 6 publications that she loves. She carefully studies them, right? And then here's what she does. Now you're remembering it. When she is presented with a new project and she's on the consultation, she literally identifies right then and there, this project is going to work for Domino. This project is going to work for XYZ. And what she does then is, the whole process, she is, with respect to her consumer, she's designing a home that reflects them, but she is intentionally creating the type of look and features that are valued by that publication. And then when she pitches it, it's like a slam dunk. It fits their aesthetic.
Well, that is
Isn't that awesome?
That's pretty good. I have to say that's pretty good.
I mean, and this kid is in business like a year and a half, and she's been published like 10 times more than anybody else. Like crazy.
But and really again back to just press is what do you want it to do? Do you want it what are you asking of it? Do you want somebody to read about it and find you? Do you want more clients? Do you want to become a personality? So she probably it sounds like she had in her mind, like, maybe larger goals, because that's a pretty aggressive
smart
thing.
Smart.
Yeah, it's very smart. But what she's doing so well is she's understanding, and this was kind of, as we were coming out of the recession, I was saying, listen, these magazines, I mean, I was a part of that movement. Their staff got smaller and smaller and smaller. Mm. And now they also have to create a lot of online content. So look at your pitch and look at the photograph that you are pitching along with it, and look at the page that you want to be a part of, and ask yourself honestly, does it look like it already belongs there? Right. Because more than likely they don't have the budget anymore to send a photographer. Mm-hmm. And so you just want to do exactly what she was doing. She was giving them what looked like already belonged in their magazine. Of course, it's a slam dunk. And not only that, they're thrilled that they don't have to go and photograph it.
Exactly. I know. I was so impressed by her. That was episode 179. Yeah. And it was funny because, just to give her another shout out too, because the other really aha moment from her episode was the fact that she intentionally, at the couple of design firms that she worked at before she opened her own, she intentionally navigated that she worked in the office end of the design firm, doing the product procurement and doing the specifying and doing the POs and doing all that. Because she was like, I know how to design. You know what I mean? And of course she can learn something from anybody. It wasn't that she was being uppity about it, but she knew when it was time to go out and set and be on her own, she needed to know how to run the business side of it. So really, really smart, intentional
really
kid.
Smart.
Yeah. Really, yeah. So
there's one thing and in this book that I think that gives a lot of comfort, but is so true for probably all of us, that we'd like to see in others, but celebrating yourself a little is not a bad thing,
right?
And but do it from your one-of-a-kind point of view, and that point of view is really critical, because you don't need to try to be like everybody else. We are in a that part should be embraced, because that's what somebody listening for to share with the next person. They're looking for what makes you different from that next designer, and that's how an editor listens, like with those ears, like what makes her different, and so you can celebrate that. And this example I give in the book is or the profile that I follow up with is Cloth and Kind Interiors, and they're a designer partnership. There are two of them, but they're textile addicts, and they love, and they're storytellers, and everything they touch, it kind of reeks of all of those things, of surface design, of textiles, whether it's their business card or their blog post or what they are wearing. That is their point of view.
Intentional. It's thought out, intentional. That's the thing, it comes down to that in everything you do. It's like we said at the beginning, why? Why do you want the press? Do you want the press to earn new clients? Do you want the press to become an influencer? Do you, what's your why?
Yeah, do you want to be an expert of some, do you want to be a color expert and kind of known for an expert, a certain expertise?
Right. And then,
do you want to collaborate with someone? Sometimes there are companies out there looking to collaborate, and they may not be even in the, they may be looking for someone with your particular skill, but just know the why.
Right, exactly. Because, you know, like to your point with Cloth and Kind, once you know your why, then everything you do, it informs everything you do, right? You line it up and just keep putting it out there.
They said that was a very intentional part of their business plan, because because there are two of them, it's a check, you know, are we staying true to kind of what we have charged ourselves with being.
I love it.
And I like that a lot.
I do too. I love it. I love it. I think you're a brilliant lady there, Amy. You know, and you're good people too, on top of it. That's the icing on the cake. That's what I love.
Well, listen, that next, one thing I always pay attention to is, you know, when we had that first, when you said, big FOMO for the book launch and the gathering, a lot of people would see those pictures and say, oh, I want to be a part of that next one. That's how we would invite the next people,
right?
You know,
right?
And that creates fun, goodwill. That creates invitations to come somewhere else and do something like it and help gather. And then we produce that thing, and it's just a small movement, you know. But so next time you're still on that list. We'll get you there.
Thank you.
You're really so great at what you do, and we've probably gone down some weird road of communications. But I think that ultimate thing that I was seeing, and why it would necessitate a whole book on it, that shows you how. But the larger picture is commerce and creativity and communications are sitting in the same boardroom now. They're not, you know, they're not distant cousins anymore, and that's exciting for a very creative field. I think that's why it resonates so well with these designers, who didn't think they were going to be marketing geniuses. You know, they went into interior design, and then they're finding all kinds of opportunity out there, because there's all kinds of opportunity out there for it.
Yeah, no, it is a difficult thing to think that, you know, you go to school or you come by it a different way, but you are a talented interior designer, and now you have to be an editor and a pitcher and a blogger and you know, all these things.
You know, you get to that place where you decide, do I want to grow that, and it should start from within.
Right.
You know?
Right. No, but you know what? It's people like yourself that put out good quality information like this that can help us navigate this field for us, because it is a reality of business now. You can't put your head in the sand, and there are a lot of opportunities and ways, like you said, digitally and in print, in order to propel your business forward. So, I mean, thank you for your part in helping us do this, Amy. And I know that, look, the book can be found on recipeforpress.com, which is your website, but you have other resources on the website for us as well. I know that you have your pitch wheel. You want to give us just a little commercial about that stuff, so we know what else we can get there?
Yep. That pitch wheel is a cute little tool, physical tool that you hang up in your office that reminds you when to pitch and what. Because regional editors are working 2 and 3 months in advance. National editors are working 5 and 6 months in advance. So it's kind of like one of those old-fashioned informational wheels where you say, okay, we're in March, but national editors are pulling together August issues. So it's a quick cheat, you know, to remind.
It's very handy. You sent me one. It's a great device.
Ideas.
Yep.
That, and then and all of these things are just responses to people saying, will you,
this?
You know, the other thing that's a super valuable tool is a relevant media list that we update religiously and painstakingly. And it's not always perfect, because, of course, the minute we get done, an editor moves.
Exactly.
But when you need to find that editor and their contact quickly, or you need to discover other publications out there relevant to this industry at a very reasonable price, that's our media list.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, that I can see as being an extreme. And I have had many designers that I've interviewed on the show that off air have told me that they have purchased that from you and that it's been helpful. Yeah, definitely.
And they get reminders in June that it's time to pitch Christmas, and they all love that.
Exactly. It's the truth. It's so true because, we're like in New Jersey, for crying out loud. It's the beginning of May and we just had a nice day. So who's thinking about Christmas yet? We're just like, please, can we turn the heat off? Oh, so awesome. Well, thank you so much, Amy. I always enjoy our conversations. You're always so smart and always so helpful and generous and giving of your information, your expertise that you've come by with a very long career in doing exactly this. So thank you for sharing it with us.
You got it. Thank you, Luann.
So as we said, and I said it in the intro and during the show as well, if you want the actual start with 1, go to 2, go with 3, you really do want to head back to show number 108. And of course, you do want to get both of Amy's books for this step by step. I remember the first time Amy was on the show, a few months later, someone wrote to me. It might have been Leslie Myrick. I'm not sure. I feel like it was. And she said, I heard Amy on your show and I got her book and I just love it. So there were others, but I feel like it was you, Leslie. Anyway, if you want Amy's books or some of the other products that she offers to help you get press for your interior design firm, just visit recipeforpress.com. Okay, now, this particular show, Amy's message. What does she talk about? She talks about create your story. She encourages it to layer it, and she encourages you to be intentional with your social media and your press strategy, right? She says, think about what do you want from press, okay? Just about everything we do starts with why are we doing it, right? It doesn't matter what we do. Why are you building a website? Nicole Heimer, a couple of weeks ago from Curio Electro, she said one of the first things is what do you want from your website? So Amy asks you the same question here. What do you want from press? All right. Amy also taught us how important relationships are. It's important to nurture them, take care of them, and give and take, right? Invite people like she invites people to her opening, but then they're happy to do something for her in return, okay? Amy also suggests that we explore press beyond the typical shelter magazines and the shelter publications, whether they're online or in print. She says to look outside the box. Look at your manufacturers. Look at them. They might have blogs and publications that they create that they're always looking for information to include. Okay? The bottom line is be creative in where you look and how you do it. And I just love it. I just think it's awesome information. Now, we didn't even talk about the other thing that Amy does here. Amy has co-founded Paper Cut Project. Now, we did talk a little bit about it on the first show, but I didn't even remember to bring it up on this show. This is a company that conceives highly crafted installations for fashion houses, including Hermes, Kate Spade, Valentino, Christie's, and the Victoria and Albert Museum. I have to tell you, I'm not even going to attempt to try to describe what this is. It is truly remarkable, beautiful, what her and her partner create in this company, the Paper Cut Project. What I would suggest is go to Amy's Instagram page for it. It's called Paper Cut Project, just for information, just to see it. It really is pretty incredible what she does there. It's like a whole different thing. It's like a whole separate thing. It's interesting. Anyway, let's not forget about the big news about 2 of my show sponsors. Have you heard it yet? Did you hear that you will soon be able to source everything that's available from curatedcravat.com through My Doma Studio? Yes, you will. So this means that if next time you're working on your next project in My Doma Studio, because that's the software that you use to do your design work, right? Right. If you are working in there the next time and you're looking for the perfect lamp, area rug, sofa, maybe it's bedding that you want, it'll all be there in the platform, right? So You have to go for the demonstration to understand all the ins and outs and all the different ways that my Doma Studio can help you. You remember a couple of weeks ago, Wendy Wallace-Chuck was telling us how she creates packages that she sells overnight while she's sleeping right through mydomastudio.com. So to figure out all the things that you can do with My Doma Studio, go to mydomastudio.com/a-well-designed business. Okay? mydomastudio.com/a-well-designed business. All right, last thing. I have, legit about 5 or 6 places that you can meet with me live in the next 2.5 weeks, either live in person or in webinars. So the list is getting long. It's a little silly to keep saying it here on the show, but if you're on my email list, you'll get the information in the email that goes out every Wednesday. So if you want to be on my email list, it has everything that goes on that has to do with a Well-Designed Business podcast. You just simply text the word Design Biz, DESIGN Biz, B-I-Z. No caps, no spaces, to this number, 444-999. Okay? Design Biz to the number 444-999. All right. Otherwise, you can go over to my website, luannniagara.com, and go to the events page. All right. Thank you tons for tuning in today. Show Amy some love. Give her a shout out on social media, on Instagram or Facebook or wherever you can find her. Tell her one thing that got you thinking. Share with Amy one thing that made you think that she said. Then I want you to decide to take action on it, okay? Decide to be excellent. Thank you so much for joining me again today. This podcast is a production of WindowWorks, your resource for custom window treatments and awnings. To learn how we can help you on your next interior design project, go to www.windowworks-nj.com. And if you're interested in working with me on your business, either through masterminds or one-on-one coaching, or you want to know how to get my book, The Making of a Well-Designed Business, or you just want to know what's going on in the podcast land and where I'm going to be, all of that is found at luannniagara.com. Thank you so much. Have an excellent day.